Hello everybody, in this episode I am going to be showing you guys how to do an intro all inside of Premiere. If you're doing like an intro for your YouTube channel or an intro for a video or for a web series or something like that, I'm going to show you kind of some concepts here to use within Premiere. And a lot of this honestly is just I'm going to have to say you have to be creative. You have to kind of be creative and come up with your own concepts. With this I'm showing you just kind of one or two little methods here and something that I use for some of my intros here. But like I said, it's like you can almost do anything you can think of inside of Premiere. Oh, it's not like a big extensive like 3D animation or After Effects sort of deal, but you can make some very professional looking graphics and some very professional looking intros inside of Premiere, like the one that you saw, hopefully the one that you saw at the beginning of this tutorial here. Hopefully it looks professional. That's what I'm going for. So I don't want to brag and say, oh yeah, it's so professional. But anyway. All right, so I'm going to go down here to my new item icon. I'm going to create a new sequence. You have to kind of decide what frame rate and what resolution you're working in. And this one I'm just going to do a 1080 resolution. I'm going to do 30p just because I'm going straight to YouTube here. If you're doing film, you can do like 24p, but I'm going to do 30p for just a standard kind of YouTube format here. I'm going to name my sequence Final Intro here. This is going to be my timeline that I put my final introduction in. And make a little bit more timeline room. And first, one thing that I really try to do, as much as possible, I try to make the assets that I use my own. I'm going to show you some other assets that I grabbed from YouTube and from off the internet, but something really simple that you can go get for yourself are going to be backgrounds. And backgrounds, I'm going to go under stills here. I'm going to hold down Option and double click and show you these little backgrounds here. These are textures here. These are textures that I just went out and did myself. I just did this really quick just for this intro. Went out and shot a few of these. This is just basically cement with a crack in it here. This one here, this one's not as good, but you can darken this up and contrast it. This is just like a deck here. This is a sycamore tree here that I took a close-up of. And most of these, like I said, I just took with my cell phone. With a Note 3, an ancient, really, by today's standards, an ancient phone that like shoots 5K images here. I just went out, and it has a macro lens in it. Went out and focused on the tree or the background or whatever I'm working with here and took a picture. Here's a wood grain one that I took of a fence here. I just walked up to a fence, and you just think of something that you like that has texture. For this one, specifically for the intro that you saw at the beginning, and I'm going to choose my cement one. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is decide how long my timeline is going to be. I'm going to go over here to my project window, and I'm going to go, and this is a file. This is an MP3 that I pulled off of Incompetech.com. If you pull a music file off of Incompetech.com, you've got to credit Incompetech.com for the use of that if you want to have it for royalty free. Otherwise, if you're monetizing, if you're making a lot of money off of your project, if you're doing a commercial where you're making money off of it, you can pay for this music. It's like $40-50, which is not much to create your own intro, and you can pay for off of Incompetech.com. So I want to credit that Incompetech.com for the use of this music here, and there it is. I'm going to grab this music. I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to hit period and drop it into my timeline. I'm going to hit Shift 3, go to my timeline. I'm going to hit Shift plus to increase my track height and hit home to go to the beginning here. So this music, let me play a little bit of this music here. And it's pretty loud. Select the clip, hit G for gain. I'm going to go -8 here. Let's see how far that takes it down. Hit home to go to the beginning. There's my music. One thing I grabbed off of Incompetech.com, I looked for music that was 15 seconds long. This one is actually with, it's 15 seconds, but it's actually 15 seconds with extra little space here. So this is actually about 12 seconds long. So that's a good time for an intro right there. I would recommend don't get anything like 45 seconds to a minute long. Try to find the music clips that last just like 12 to 15 seconds long at the most. That's quick enough for an intro. Otherwise, you're going to be annoying people, probably like I do with my intro that I have the Hawk versus Truck thing. So I know people complain about that, but oh well, live with it. It's free. So now that I've got this done here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find my still image that I want. I'm going to hold down Option, double click on my stills, turn this to thumbnails. I'm going to double click on my cement texture here. I'm going to type in 12 to go to 12 seconds, period. We'll add a placeholder for the frames, hit enter, and it jumps to 12 seconds and 0 frames. Now, O for out point, Shift 3 to go to my timeline, home to go to the beginning, and period to drop it in. And there it is. And actually, I'm going to take it out just a little bit longer to fill it in the same length as the music there. So now I've got my texture here, but this is actually like 5K texture, and I could use this crack if I wanted to. I'm going to go to Effect Controls. I didn't in the intro that you saw here, but if you wanted to use it, we could grab our scale, zoom up on this, and let's bring this down on the vertical line. It might look kind of cool. I'm going to leave it in there anyway, right there. I didn't use it on the original intro, but let's see how this kind of turns out. I'm going to move it down and kind of leave it right there at the bottom of the screen. Now, some other things that I grabbed here. If I go back to my little project tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my project tutorial right next to my bins there, so that's kind of quick, easy access. They're right next to each other now. Under graphics, I'm going to option double click on that, open this up, and I'm going to go to my icon view here. These are some still images that I grabbed online here. I just searched on Google and searched free high quality graphics, and I brought these up. These are some high quality graphics. You could use these for your textures much in the same way I'm going to use this cement here. But we're going to show you how to kind of make this utilize this cement texture to kind of make it a little bit more professional. I'm going to grab my leaves, double click on that. I'm on a PC, so I'm going to do Control Shift X. It is Command X on a Mac, and it clears the in and out points. I'm going to put an I for an in point at the beginning and leave an open out point. It does not have an out point now. Shift 3 to go to my timeline. I for in point. I'm going to hit end and hit O for out point. And now I'm going to do a 3-point edit. It'll take the in point of this clip and fill it in to this space right here. But I have to hit my source patching for the top channel, activate it, and period, and there it is. So it's the exact same length here as my bottom clip. And what this is here, I searched on Google, once again, free images, looked for Google black and white images, black and white mats. And this one I specifically typed in leaves. Depending on what your theme is, you can type in like a certain word and type in black and white mats, video mats, or still image mats, and you can look under images under Google, and you can find these things. So here's Google. I've typed into the engine here, leaves, matte, black and white. If you click on images here, after you do the search, if you click on images, it'll bring up images. And if you're looking for a specific theme, of course, look at this. You can find these black and white mats. Honestly, I would say try to find ones that have free images, and you can use these as mats instead. Once you click on these, the black and white, you can use these to do composites here. So once you find one you like, you hit View Image, and it will bring it up in a little image here. You can right click on it and say Save Image As. And honestly, if some of these are copyrighted, you got to be careful about these things, because you can get in trouble or get your videos pulled for using copyrighted image. Because if you hide them enough, and a lot of people do this, if you hide them enough by blurring them or doing motion to them. Well, so with this on top here, I'm gonna hit home and go to the beginning, and now we got the leaves on top of the cement here. I'm gonna kind of kill that right now. I'm gonna hit the eyeball and kill that, and we're gonna do some color correction here to this image to make it look a little bit more interesting. I'm going to go under my color arrangement, and I'm going to go under creative, or actually I'm going to go under basic. I'm going to go under basic control here. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to grab my exposure, and I'm going to pull my exposure down so it's not so bright. I'm going to grab my contrast and drag that up so it makes this a little bit more contrasty. And already we're starting to get some interesting texture there. Now let's go to the leaves here, and what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do some little animation and movement over the leaves. So we've got a kind of a background texture. I'm going to go to my leaves. I'm going to go to Effect Controls. I'm going to zoom this up a little bit so it's just overriding this image behind. Actually, let's go up a little bit more so we can do kind of some rotation with this. I'm going to take it to 200%. And there we go. All right, now we're going to do a little animation on this from beginning to end. I'm going to go to my rotation here. I'm going to start a rotation point at the beginning. I'm going to hit end, and you have to arrow back one frame because it goes to the frame afterwards when you hit end. There we go on the last frame. I'm going to add an extra keyframe right here. I'm going to go to the beginning, and I'm going to rotate this backwards a little bit like that. And I'm going to go to the end frame and rotate a little bit to the right. So from beginning to end, let me mute the audio here. As we play through it, you'll notice the leaves are doing this kind of slow rotation thing. I'm going to use these leaves as just kind of a texture overlay for this clip right here. Now with the leaf selected, I'm going to go to the opacity filter right here. I'm going to go to the opacity settings right here. I'm going to pull this down, and actually I'm going to turn my keyframing off on this. For some reason it's on default when you start with opacity. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to do overall opacity for the whole thing. Well, before we do this, I'm going to pull down the blend mode, and I'm going to go down to a screen overlay. This screen overlay right here, what it does is it takes out the blacks and leaves in the highlights. So if I click on this, notice the blacks are removed, and you got this kind of superimposed image of the whites of the highlights on this textured background. So already we're starting to get kind of an interesting looking image here. I'm going to go to the opacity. I can turn that down a little bit. We can go down to maybe like about 68%. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go back to editing here, and I'm going to go to my effects tab. I'm going to click in here and type in blur and find my Gaussian blur. I'm going to grab that, drag it, and drop it onto my leaves, and go to the effects controls and turn up my blurriness just a bit to kind of conceal the patterns of this image that I have right here. Let's hit home, go to the beginning, and let's play this back and see what we've got so far. So already we're starting to get kind of a cool little graphical image going on here with some looks like some animation going on there, which it actually is. And actually I'm going to go to my JPEG here below, and I'm going to go to my exposure. I'm going to go down to my lumetri settings, go to my exposure here, and I'm going to bring my exposure down even more to make a little bit of contrast between the leaves and the background. And there we go. And that's starting to look kind of cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these two clips on top. I'm going to right click on them, and I'm going to go to Nest. Click on Nest. What it's going to do is going to combine these two together as if they are one clip and treat them like they are one clip. I'm going to call that one background nest. I'm going to hit OK, and it saves that background nest there. It's basically a timeline. You double click on this and it opens up that timeline showing those two clips together, so you can still alter those things separately. So I'm going to close this, but in the final intro here, my final intro timeline, it treats it as if it's one clip. Now what I'm going to do to this background here is I'm going to go back under color arrangement, and I'm going to make a little bit of a vignette for this. I'm going to go to vignette, and I'm going to grab the amount, I'm going to drag it to negative, which will add a dark vignette around the corner. And look at this, we're starting to get this vignette. Let's look at before and after. Before, after, and you can see what's happening. You mess with the midpoint on this and add a heavier vignette, roundness to change the shape, and feather to soften up the edges there, exactly where you need them. And I like it right about there. There's before and there's after. So you can see what we're kind of starting to get here. I'm going to copy my audio here. Let's unmute this. I'm going to select this audio. I'm going to hit Control C, Command C on a Mac and copy. And I'm going to go to my background nest, double click, it opens up that timeline, and I'm going to do a Control V to paste. I'm going to use this as a reference here. And I'm going to go to the beginning, and we're going to do some effects based on the beat here. Listen to this. And you hear the little click, 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 click of the drumsticks there, and then the music starts. So I'm going to use that beat to kind of create an effect here. And I'm going to just do it on the leaves. So I'm going to select the leaves here. I want these leaves to kind of get brighter every time the beat hits. So I want these things to start out bright, and I want them to kind of, and as the right before the beat, I want them to dim down and then go up high, and then dim down and go up high on every beat. So what I'm going to do, like I said, you kind of got to just use your own creativity, your sense of creativity on these things. I'm going to select this clip here, and I'm going to grab my exposure slider, and once I start moving this, it's going to add a lumetri color to the clip here, to the leaves clip. There it is right there. I can double click on that, reset it to 0, and now my lumetri panel has been added. I'm going to pull down my basic correction, scroll down, and for the opening keyframe, I'm going to pull up the exposure a bit and make this kind of really bright. I'm going to add a keyframe here, and now I'm going to move in to right before that beat starts, and I'm going to grab this and turn it to 0. So right there adds another keyframe. So it goes from really bright to 0. So look at this effect you get. See how that kind of dims on the brightness there. And I'm going to get it right to this clip. Right there where the click happens on the drum, I'm going to add another keyframe. Let's zoom up on this here. I'm going to hit plus, 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 and you can see here's the keyframe when it turns down to 0, and right here, I'm going to turn it back up to bright again. In fact, I'm going to make this a little more blurry, about right there. So now what happens when it hits that first beat right there, it goes bright again. What I can do now is copy these two keyframes where it goes to 0 and then to bright again. Copy it, get it right to the frame before this here, click inside this window, make sure it's doing it here, and do Control V and paste. So I pasted it from this like 6.2% down to 0%, back up to 6.2%, and I'm going to move it over here and do the exact same thing. Arrow over, right there's where the first click is, arrow back one frame, click up in my effect controls, make sure this is highlighted here, and do Control V and paste. So let's look at the effect we're getting so far. And notice it does the flash on every beat there. And I'm going to do that one more time up here. I'm going to click and do that, and then we want it to go back to 0 here, so I'm going to put another keyframe and bring that down to 0. So you can see what's happening here. I'm going to move this over and kind of show you my keyframes, what's happening. I'm going to zoom out and look at this. It's going from kind of high exposure down to 0, then clicking up in one frame up to high, so it kind of does this flash on on the beat here. So let's look at this. There we go. So we have kind of that funky effect going on. And now I can actually get rid of my music because I've got that reference done. I hit delete. I go back to my final intro where my audio came from here. And let's take a look at this. Now it has the vignette and everything on it. there we go. So we've got a good little start going here. I'm going to go back to editing here. And now what I'm going to start doing is creating some text here. Let's pretend that this thing is a podcast intro that I'm doing for a podcast intro that we're turning into a video intro for YouTube. So what I want to do is start coming up with some text I'm going to use, and I've come up with some. Let me show you kind of what I went with in the first place. Here's the intro that I created. From the very beginning here it says, what will you cast, like in what will you podcast? I know I'm not being very creative, but I don't give a crap. It's just an example. So I'm going to go down to my new file here. Actually, I'm going to create a folder. We're going to call this folder Titles. I'm going to select that folder so it dumps my titles in there. I'm going to hit a new window here. I'm going to go to New Title. I'm going to call this one 01. I'm going to number these things so they're easy to keep in order here. I'm going to call this What. So that's the first line that I'm going to say. I'm going to hit What. It brings open this title window. Let's make this a little bit bigger here so you can kind of see what we're doing. I'm going to find a title type that I like. I can go down to here to the templates and kind of find a beginning title. I don't know. Let's see, like that color right there looks good. Let's go a little bit more bold right there. I like that one. So I'm going to click in here and type in the words what. Now I'm going to hit my arrow here. What I'm going to do with this what here, first of all, I'm going to center it so it centers it within my text window right here. And then I'm going to hit center here physically and horizontally. I should say vertically and horizontally. I'm going to go to, and since I centered it up here, whenever I change the font size right here, it'll keep that centered and dead center at least vertically here. I got to hit the horizontal center to bring it back up. But this is a different text layer than a format that I used before. We can go to here and find which one we like. Let's say like that one right there, and let's center it horizontally there. So horizontal and vertical centering. There we go. So there's my first sentence I'm going to be using there. I can change my let's change my shadow. Get this exactly the way I want it. I'm going to bring out the distance here, bring out the spread, and kind of change this up a little bit. Distance, kind of make it stand out a little bit more. And there it is. You can actually. There it is. Okay, so now I got this exactly the way I want to. This title has been saved under my title folder. If I want to duplicate this, I like the format. I'm going to use this title. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go up to this little item right here and say new title based on current title. Click that, and I'll say, what do you want to name it? 02. I'm going to say this one do. I can't remember what the text is. I'll say, what do you cast? I'm going to hit OK. And that one has been saved as do. Now we can double click in here and change this to, I'm going to hold down caps and do. And right here, let's just make sure it's centered both ways. It is. And I'm going to hit my next new title here, 03-U. And hit OK. Double click in here, type in U. That one's saved as U. Click a new title, 04 cast. Hit OK. Double click in there. Change that to cast with a question mark. There we go. Let's close that. So now I've got all four of my titles there for the beginning. I'm going to click in my timeline and hit home, go to the beginning. So I'm going to grab my first title. I'm going to drag it to my source window. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-X. It is Option-X on a Mac, and it clears the endpoints and outpoint. Put endpoint, Shift-3 to go to my timeline. Hit home to go to the beginning. I for endpoint. And let's move over to, I'm hitting frame by frame, arrow right here. Right there where the first click starts, outpoint. Actually, I'm going to take that one frame back, out point, right before the click hits, and hit period to drop it in, and change my source to the V2 here, hit period, and drop it in. With my playhead right here, I'm going to hurry and put in an endpoint, I for endpoint, move over to the next one. There's the first click, arrow to the left to go one frame back, out point. I'm going to go to my next title here, drag it and drop it into the source monitor, Control-Shift-X to clear my in and out points, I for my endpoint and an open out point, period, drop it in. And so on here. Let's drop this one in, Control-Shift-X, endpoint. And this doesn't do this with video, with still images, and with text. It adds an automatic like 5-second endpoint and out point unless you change your duration by default. Shift-3 to go to my timeline, endpoint, out point, period, and my last one here, cast. Control-Shift-X, Shift-3, endpoint, and I'm going to make it stop right about there, out point, period, drop it in. So let's go to inside of a timeline here. Let's hit home and take a look at what we've got. There we go. I'm going to select everything, Control A or Command A on a Mac. I'm going to move this out a little way so I've got a little bit of pre-roll in black. Play. And there we go. Okay, now that we've got the text going, let's add kind of a cool little transitional moment from this text to something new here. What I've done is I've gone onto YouTube and I've searched a couple things. I typed in film scratch and I typed in film flare, and I brought up a couple different things on YouTube. Let me show you a website you can use. This convert to mp3.net. There's a bunch of these out there that you can use to extract clips from YouTube. So let's go to YouTube really quick, and in the search engine I'm going to type in film scratch. And actually it brings up like overlays and stuff. You can find these film scratch textures and all these kind of black and white textures that you can use with the film flares and film scratches and a whole bunch of things that you can use here. If you click on one of these and you find one that you like. So here's a film scratch YouTube clip that you can use, and it's free. This is a free one, free HD animation you can use. You go down to your share button and you copy this right here. You copy your URL. You go back to this convert to MP3. You drop it into the insert video link here, and you choose MP4. MP4 is a really good format to use. You can tell it if it has a 1080 available. You can click on this and say I want to choose 1080 as my full quality. You hit convert. And sometimes it brings up these stupid little advertisements. You just close those, and then you hit download. And once you hit download, it will download it to your computer, and then you can use that as one of your assets. Here I've got two that I've downloaded from YouTube. I've got this film scratch one here. If I double click on this, there's the film scratch, and you double click on the warm light leaks. This is kind of cool. They've got a bunch of these little flares that you can use as transitions. I'm going to use a combination of those two there. I'm going to grab my video track here, pull down the middle, so I've got my audio down here, and I've got more room to access here. I'm going to grab my film texture. And this one has audio on it, so I'm not going to drop it right into my timeline. I'm going to drop it up in my source window, grab this video tab, and drag and drop it right here. I'm going to hit C for my razor tool, click right there, and cut off this, make it last a certain length there. I'm going to grab my warm light leaks, drag it up here, and find a transition. I want to find the one that kind of goes all the way to white here. And that one is a good one right there. That screen, it goes all the way to white, so that's a good solid transition. I'm going to move this over right there when it kind of gets darker. In point. And before I drag that down, I'm going to grab my film scratch. I want my film scratches on top of everything. I'm going to hold down Option and arrow up, Shift plus to bring up all the track heights there. I'm going to drag this video and drop it right here. Hit C for my razor, cut it there. V for my arrow tool, select that, and delete. Now we've got this little film scratch on top and the warm light on top of that. Now messing with this before, I know that I want this transition to go a little faster. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to go speed. I'm going to double this transition specifically, and we can kind of move that in the middle and extend it to the end and to the beginning. Right there, so it lasts kind of the same length of time as this film scratch. Now with this film scratch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a composite. I'm going to select that clip, and I'm going to go to Effect Controls, and under Opacity, I'm going to tell it how to blend. I'm going to take out the darks once again. I'm going to go down to Blend Mode and tell it to do a screen overlay. Once again, takes out the darks. Now we got this film scratch over my warm light here. Now what I'm going to do is create a transition. I'm going to make sure that white is right over where this edit point happens right there. And that little white transitions down here a little further right there. So I want that kind of be to my middle point. I'm going to move that over here so that white right there is on my middle point. Let's move that over. Option, arrow left a couple times. So right when it hits the end of this text, it's completely white right there. I'm going to make this film scratch match timing right there. And we're going to go, I'm going to hold down Control or Command on a Mac and click right here and add a keyframe and bring this down so it fades out. The fade out does a different thing on the composite if you do a cross dissolve. So you don't want to do a cross dissolve, you just want to bring the opacity down. So I'm going to click there and make this basically with opacity, fade up and fade down. I'm going to copy this. Right click on this. I copy this by hitting Control C or Command C. Right click on the bottom one and do Paste Attributes. And it's going to paste, we're going to paste opacity, not the motion. And boom, it pasted those exact same keyframes to this clip here. So now as we play through it, look at the effect that we get with this composite on top of it. Has that little bright thing there. And if we want this, I'm going to make this last a little bit longer. I kind of like that flare. I'm going to make this last a little bit longer and then gradually fade out. Let's see how that looks. And I like that. Same thing here. I'm going to make these scratches last a little bit longer. Even more on this. I like that effect. So I'm going to mess with the opacity there. There we go. And I'm going to copy this. Make this one last the exact same amount of time. And right click and paste the attributes to this clip right here. And we're going to do the opacity. And there we go. Exact same keyframes. Let's look at it. And there we go. It got that funky little effect. Next thing I'm going to do is I like this little kind of flash thing that happens at the beginning to the beat with the leaves. So I'm going to take that again. I'm going to borrow it. So what I'm going to do is get right here. I'm going to hit C and cut off the rest of my background. I'm going to hit V to select that and delete. I'm going to hit this, Control C and copy. And I'm going to Control V and paste. And I paste the exact same thing with the exact same effect. I'm going to put this over here, move this over, and see if that kind of goes along with the beat. Let's look. So it's got kind of that little pumpy effect here again. And I'm just going to move that over till it matches. Hold down Option, arrow right a few times, and let's see how that matches. And I can see right here is a beat, so I'm going to start it like right there, grab this one arrow over to the right, and let's see how that looks. So I got that lined up with the beat. And there we go. It kind of stutters a little bit, but I like that effect depending on what I'm doing. I can grab this and arrow it over and grab it, extend it over to the right. Now let's do some text with some animation here. I'm going to go under my stills. I'm going to go and select my titles, and now I'm going to arrow down. I'm going to grab this cast one right here, and I'm going to create a new one based off of this one's presets here. I'm going to click New One. All right, and I've created 4 new texts here. Who can you be? So once again, not very creative, but if you're making a statement or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to drop this text, put it in here, and I'm going to make this a little bit longer. I'm going to grab these 2 clips. I'm going to hold Option and arrow up a few times so I have room to stack these here. But I'm going to be able to bring that down later because I'm going to change these. So I'm going to kind of put these to the beat as well. Boom, who, and right on the flash. I'm going to put my can. I'm going to stack these instead because I'm not editing. I'm stacking these. Can, and then I'm going to move over to the next flash. Right there, you, and the last flash right there, B. So I'm kind of utilizing these flashes here, but now these are all stacked on top of each other. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to nest them. I'm going to right-click and say Nest. I'm just going to call this Who Nest, hit OK, and it creates that new nested file there, and now they're all collapsed into one. I'm going to hit tilde over my window here, grab these 2 items, and Option, and arrow them back down so I am all kind of packed down here next to each other. So now I've got these 4 items that kind of show up right there, but I'm going to do some animation with these here. So I'm going to double click on them. It'll open up this window with them all on a stack. I'm going to arrow these over and make them the same length there. But now we're going to animate these things. I'm going to select Who, and I'm going to go up to my effects controls. I'm going to go up to position. I'm going to move this over to the side and move this up to right about there. Then I'm going to select my motion and hit Control C and copy this. I'm going to go to my can, move it over so I can see can, go up to my motion, select it, and Control V and paste. It puts it on the same horizontal vertical line there, and I can grab my horizontal position, move it over here. And I'm going to move it about right there because I want these to kind of look like they're centered. Let's go to Who and move that over a little bit this way, like that. Now let's go to You. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go up to Motion and do the same thing, Control V and paste. So it puts it right up there, lines it up with that, but I'm going to change the vertical position down here. I'm going to select the B, move my arrow over so I can see it, and hit Motion and Control V and paste. And on this one, I'm going to actually grab the can, and I'm going to hit up the motion, Control C and copy, and hit the B, and go up to motion and hit Control V and paste. So it lines it up with this side here. And grab my vertical position and move it downwards. And actually, if I want to match that vertical position of the U here, I can go to U and look at it. My vertical position is 657. Copy it, Control C, go to B, go to this U here and go to the vertical position, which is 716. Control C and copy, go to the B, and that's pretty close. Select this and go Control V to paste. It was only off by 2 pixels. Hit enter, and now it's exactly lined up on the exact same vertical position. Now we're going to animate these things. I'm going to select Who, and I'm going to go to, I want a little bit of motion blur. And to do motion blur, you can't use the motion animate. You have to use an effect called transform. And I'm going to go under Effects, type in transform, and here it is right here. I'm going to drag and drop that to Who right there, and down here you have the transform effect. This allows you to do a motion blur as well. When it is put to motion, it can add a blur which makes it look very natural. I'm going to hit my position here, keyframe at the beginning. I'm going to arrow over to the right, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. I want 8 frames over. I'm going to add a new keyframe right there. And this is where it's going to end up. I'm going to arrow back to my first keyframe and move it off screen to the left. So now as we play through this, watch, it just kind of moves on, and it's very quick and it's very stroby as it moves on. So it looks very unnatural. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this keyframe here. I'm going to zoom up, plus, plus, plus. I'm going to right click on that one, and I'm going to go to temporal interpolation and ease that in. Ease it in. So it gradually comes to a stop. Now it kind of gradually comes to a stop. Let's make that actually about like 10 frames out. Right there's 10 frames out. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. I'm going to uncheck Use Composition Shutter Angle. We're going to change our shutter angle, or what is also considered shutter speed, to 180 degrees, which is half exposure time. Hit Enter, and now look what happens as it starts to move out. It has a natural motion blur here. Comes to a stop. There you go. I'm going to go to the can here. I'm going to do the same thing on each one of these here. I'm going to have the can animate from over to the right inside. So I'm going to add my transform, drag and drop it on here, add a beginning keyframe. I'm going to hold down Shift and arrow over twice, which will advance at 10 frames. Right there, 10 frames over, add another keyframe, arrow to the left, and let's grab this vertical position and move it off. Scroll down, uncheck this, go to 180, hit Enter, and now as it moves on, Shift 3, it comes on with motion blur. Now I'm going to do the same to the U and the B. So now I'm going to go to U, add my transform to U, and let's add our transform to B as well. Hold down the U, select the U, go to our position keyframe, Shift, arrow right twice, add another keyframe, go to the beginning one, and let's move this over here. Scroll down, uncheck this, 180, and now go to B, arrow down, get to the beginning keyframe there, click on position, Shift, arrow right twice, add a new keyframe, arrow to the left to get to that first keyframe, and scroll this off the screen. Go down to uncheck this, shutter angle 180, and there we go. So now we've got Who Can You Be flying onto the screen there. Go to our final intro, and this is nested, so let's take a look at this. There we go. I'm going to copy this now. Now everything else is going to be fairly easy from here. I'm going to activate these tracks here, deactivate these ones. So when I copy this here, Control C, I can paste, and it pastes the exact same effect right there. And there we go. So I'm going to arrow this. So I'm going to bring this back and make it disappear in the whites right there. There's a transition. I can actually hit C for my arrow tool, cut this, select this, delete it, hold this one down, copy, arrow back, hit my V1 track and my V2 track, arrow back to right there, Control V and paste, and it pastes that same background, so now I get that kind of clicky little beat thing going on there. Arrow this over, and I can make my final title. Now one thing I'm going to do with this Who Can You Be here, just a little tip here, just add a little bit of dynamics to that. I'm going to select this clip, go to the motion tab, and I'm going to go to scale. I'm going to add 2 scale keyframes. One here, we're like right in the middle. I'm going to start it right there. I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to increase this to right there. So what's going to do, it's going to grow from this keyframe to the next, but I'm going to grab these and move them to the extremes here. So now when it does this little animation here, it's zooming up. A little bit more dynamics going on there. So now I'm going to add my last title. I'm going to go to one of these ones, double click on it, and create a new title based on this title. We'll call it Final Title, hit OK. Change my center position here. Let's add a little bit of leading to separate those. Bring down our font size. I'm going to select all this, copy, and create a new title, and do a paste. And we're going to center this. I'm going to select it all, center it, and we're going to call this Podcast. I can center this here vertically, and I'm going to make this smaller, and we're going to move this down vertically here. I'm going to grab it and start moving down, hold down Shift to lock it to the center. Let's get this one and move it up a little bit, and grab this one and move it up a little bit as well. There we go. Let's close that. Let's grab our final title, shove that in there, right there. And I'm going to arrow this all the way to the, I'm going to trim that all the way to the end. I'm going to select this, and once again do the same sort of thing. We're going to start this up big and make it kind of go small. So So let's get it in the middle here, add a scale position, and add another one, and let's make this one the final position and go to the first one and make it bigger, like that. Grab this and drag it right to about there. Right click and say ease into that. So let's see what we've got there. And it gradually comes to a stop and it looks pretty good there. One final thing that I'm going to do here, just to add a little bit more movement to this whole intro here. You can use video clips as well to kind of create a final composite. I've got just some random video here. I've got like this one of the commercial projects I did here. I'm just going to grab this here. I'm going to move these up one track here. I'm going to add an endpoint right there. I'm going to drag this video down with an endpoint right there. I'm going to drag it right where the highlights begin. I'm going to hit C and make this end where the highlights start again. So now I'm going to select, I'm going to select this clip. I'm going to go up to Effect Controls. We're going to go to Blend Mode. And actually, I'm going to swap these here. I'm going to move this one over. I'm going to grab this one, hold Option and arrow it up, and grab this one and shove it down here underneath here. All right, so now I'm going to select this one because I want the text to be on top, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do a different blend mode. You can kind of experiment with some of these blend modes here. The one that I like, kind of an overlay, will kind of take some of the highlights and put in there and parts of even in the darks and kind of blend it in. So you can see kind of an image there, but you can't quite tell what it is. And in fact, I'm going to go to Effects. I'm going to grab my Gaussian blur. I'm going to drag and drop it to this clip here and put a little bit of blur on this just to soften up a bit, just so you can kind of see something going on, but you can't quite tell what it is. So let's play through this now. I actually like that, so I'm going to like move it a little bit over. But right here it's blocking with my text. I'm going to Option arrow up and move this underneath and kind of see what we get if I play it through the whole thing, and maybe hold down my Control key and do kind of a fade out on the opacity here, gradually from here to here. So you can kind of see some random little video clips kind of cutting there just from like a final video commercial thing that I did. But once again, you can't tell what it is because it's kind of blurred out, but you see some things kind of moving around. Let's actually I'm going to bring my blurriness and bring it down a little bit so you can see a little bit more image there, maybe around there. So you just have to mess with the blurriness until you get it where you like, and you can even turn down the opacity overall if you want to, and that's pretty much it. So like I said, you can grab video clips off of YouTube, you can grab backgrounds, you can grab still images, you can grab a whole bunch of different things to use as resources to create and open, and you can use Incompetech.com to go back and to get some music for your intros, or you can have custom-made music, a whole bunch of just different routes that you can take. But intros, professional-looking intros can be done in Premiere that look like you likely did it in a professional animation program or something like After Effects. So if you have any questions, post them. Thanks for watching, and that's it for now. Thank you.